Hello, Ryan here, and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all of the news from the week just past. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and let's get on with it. This week, we get the latest monthly reports. Inside Star Citizen is an all-sprint report episode, plus Alpha 321 continues to receive patch after patch of improvements, quality of life updates, and as I'm sure you're all aware, 3 new jump points. So let's kick this week's show off with an update on Alpha 321. There has been a ton of new patches since last week's episode, with a lot of new features and continued quality of life improvements, as outlined by Chris Roberts, and of course, the new jump point locations. Now let me just say, this does not mean that Alpha 4.0 and Pyro is going to release to live at the end of this year. At best, Chris was aiming to get the patch out to the Eva Cati on the PTU for the end of the year, with a live release being in 2024, early 2024. Of course, this plan can change. I'm sure there are some changes, and I am looking forward to what is said at CitizenCon, but getting the jump points into the persistent universe now is likely for a few reasons, beyond just hype building, most likely for testing, balancing, and optimizing the assets so that they are ready for 4.0, but also, as we read in the most recent monthly report, they provide 3 more alternate trade routes for ships like the Hull C, who currently in 320 are limited to the 4 Leo stations. So these jump points expand on those trade lane options while the economy team work on expanding the economy. Also, please do not think that the Magnus or Terra system will be dropping anytime soon. I can safely say this won't be happening. We know their plan to roll out systems are Pyro first, then somewhat swiftly followed by the Nyx system. Whether they have done much work on Magnus or Terra or any other system beyond Odin for Squadron, it is yet to be seen, and if they have, it won't be to the point of ready to release. I personally think that the best case scenario for the end of the year would be Pyro on the PTU for everyone, so open PTU, but I think realistically it's going to be at best Eva Cati, and potentially not even that. We will see, of course. I would love for Pyro to drop in any state for the end of the year. I just can't see it happening based on what we have heard from Chris Roberts and CIG, but my fingers are firmly crossed. I do truly hope so. Now, as mentioned, since last week, there has been numerous patches dropping for 321, with lots of quality of life updates like further ground vehicle physics improvements, headlight tweaks for the Constellation series, remote turret improvements, and it says selling items owned by other members of a party, which I hope means that we can now work together to sell commodities, cargo, and mined goods from other players, provided that you are in their party, as that would be a big win. Also, there has been many bug fixes, server and client crash fixes, and server deadlocks fixed as well. So they are really cranking out the patches, continuing to polish, optimize, and improve the quality of life in a big way, and the first 321 patch should be releasing in a couple of weeks for CitizenCon, so everything we see in these patch notes for 321 right now will be available around the 21st or 22nd of October. And then CIG will continue to expand further on the 321 branch with new features, quality of life improvements, and more. So a 321.x patch is ready for the IAE, or Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, in November. And here's hoping that this also brings the separation of the replication layer in, but that could equally be a later 320-point patch. We will see. So this week's Inside Star Citizen was an impromptu sprint report, as now everyone is in LA getting ready for CitizenCon, which is coming around very quickly. So kicking off with ship trespassing, as we heard in the most recent monthly report, this has passed its gate review and is now approaching a release-ready state, so I am definitely expecting to see this in 321. But here we can see firstly the warning players will get as they enter a ship that is not their own, which makes them hostile and fair game for anyone on board to attack them without getting a crime stat. Although the minute that the fighting starts, the intruder, so the trespasser, will gain a crime stat because they have been found out, basically. Now, this also allows for you, the ship owner, to follow the intruder back into their own ship to hunt them down without getting a crime stat as well, which I do find pretty interesting, as it kind of makes ship trespassing very dangerous and should help to deter those who are not 100% committed to the intention of trespassing, so for whatever reason you're doing it. If it's just for shits and giggles, you might want to think twice. Now, one big thing to point out, which is a great addition, is that the ship owner gets no notification of anyone joining their comms channel anymore. So when someone is trespassing on their ship, you will not be notified that they've joined your comms. Only if you are in a party with them will you be alerted. And then later down the line, they did say that things like scanners will help to check ships' internals to see if anyone is on board who shouldn't be there. Now, this work also caters for ships landing in other ships, meaning if you land your ship inside someone else's ship without permission, it can recognize that you are the ship trespasser, and if they board your ship, they will still be able to kill you and you won't have the right to kill them. Now, clearly this is a very complicated system that I'm certain will need a lot more refinement for all of the other edge cases that we find as we play with it. But as a starting point, this is a great update and should make the verse a lot more interesting, and I will certainly be performing full security sweeps on all of my ships before taking off. Now, next up, we can see the new player experience updates being applied to New Babbage on Microtech. This system is becoming modular, so it can be easily and quickly applied to all of the landing zones that need it, making life so much easier for new players. They are also adding a few new shops along the pathway from the elevators to the spaceport, which will help not just new players, but legacy players as well. As I can wholeheartedly say, it makes no difference how long you have been playing Star Citizen 4, you still forget those vital items regardless, so having these shops will be very convenient. Now, moving on, we can see work from the EUPU team as they allow for independent control for beams like the salvaging and tractor beams. Now, this also allows players to mix and match the tractor and salvaging beams simultaneously when using the dual stick or gamepad, offering much more dynamic use cases as the resource gathering gameplay continues to develop. Now, this is actually going to be very useful and allow those who practice and get good at using it to maximize their time for both salvage and tractor beam usage, and especially useful for when the Vulture gets the ability to chop chunks off of ships using the cutting beam and the tractor beam at the same time will make things a lot smoother. Also, it was mentioned in the monthly report recently that a temporary fix was brought in to speed up the hull scraping salvaging beam so that it should no longer be painfully slow. I don't know if this is for 321 or 320. Hopefully this does come in 320 though. Now, next up, we can see a potential new method for how bounty hunters will load their bounties into the Anvil Hawk's rear hold. Here we can see the use of a stasis container or stasis chamber in which the player will place their bounties into, laying down, and then the internal mechanism will come down and drag the container up into the rear. Now, this does look pretty cool, as I suppose it's somewhat more universal and useful, especially if you have incapacitated the bounty, as trying to get them to sit in the seat would probably look a little odd and likely be a bit of a nightmare for the animation and interaction teams. Plus, this does lend nicely to all of the work going on for Bounty Hunting version 2 right now, and how players will push these hoverstasis containers from their ships to the bounty admin offices for processing. I really hope we see more and hear more about Bounty Hunting version 2 at CitizenCon this year. I believe this is why they've kept pretty quiet about the overall mechanic. Anyway, moving on, next we can see the Freelancer finally getting its physical component housing set up. This is going to be applied to every ship eventually, ahead of all of the resource management work going on. After this, we saw the first pass sprint on the Origin X1, which is a hover ground bike, which is currently having a few alterations done to it from its concept, due to the amount of changes done to the vehicle component and resource management system since it was originally concepted. Now, although the X1 is still in white box, which is pretty early on in the ship pipeline, they have taken the time to visualize some baked-in light improvements as well. And I have to say, it does look pretty amazing. Although Origin isn't my style, I still look forward to seeing how this performs, especially on a racetrack, maybe against my Dragonfly. Although I get the impression the X1 might be somewhat quicker. Now, we also got to see the white box progress on the RSI Apollo Medivac interior, and it is looking so cool, with the two main rooms set to house the personal choice of varying tier medbeds, and I'm sure I am not alone in my excitement to see this ship finally getting worked on. Hopefully, we're not waiting too long for it to get into the game. And finally, sticking with ships, we check in with the ongoing work on the San Tok Yai. Right now, they are working on alien materials for the ship, as they develop the potential resources that the Xi'an would use to build their ships from. And here we see an alien version of carbon fiber to add some nice details with a pearlescent effect to make it shine in the light. Now, it is very cool to hear them talking about materials that are to be exclusive to the Xi'an Empire, based on their natural resources and processes in building, and this is all part of the work for the physical damage simulation system known as Maelstrom, as CIG have been working out all of the materials in-game, so every single material, which includes all of their properties like tensile strength, penetration value, and so on. Now, the San Tok Yai's cockpit also looks very unique, with a much more alien aesthetic to other ships, but do ignore the generic ship HUD, as CIG are currently working out all of the manufacturer-specific HUDs, so eventually they will be unique per brand. I suspect when the San Tok Yai does release, it'll just be with the generic HUD until APOA's HUD is developed. Now, this work will most definitely make this ship stand out, like we have seen with any alien ship really. They do a great job of setting them apart from their human counterparts to offer a lot more variety. Now, next up, we check in with the branding team, who are responsible for creating the individual visual identities of every single brand in the Star Citizen universe. Here, we are seeing the APOA work, and if I'm honest, I would prefer the APOA logo to be a little bit more alien than what it looks like here, but that is just a personal opinion. Now, finally, we have some new improvements to the cargo interaction system, which will help drastically when trying to fit them inside of our cargo bays. One of the devs, called Chad, added new functionality that provides some fallback logic to help us place the cargo containers easier, finding a good placement and making it more forgiving, which is a great quality of life update that was apparently not very simple at all, and Chad said he practically had to write a PhD thesis on packing algorithms. Now, I will say Chad is one of those developers who really puts his blood, sweat and tears into Star Citizen, so big thank you to him. But that was Inside Star Citizen, a great Sprint Report episode, and now this show is on its usual 3-week hiatus, so it will return post-CitizenCon, but I'm sure we'll have plenty to keep us going during that event anyway. So also this week, October's subscriber promotion was revealed, keeping in spirit with the Day of the Vara celebrations. The roadmap update was released. I have covered the changes in more detail in a dedicated video, which explains the plan for Alpha 321's patch rollout for the rest of the year, so do follow the link in the description to learn more about that. Both the Persistent Universe and Squadron 42 monthly reports are available to read now. I have already broken down the need-to-know information for the Squadron 42 report, also linked in the description, and I am now deep into the Persistent Universe report, which I will release next week. And finally, talking about the Day of the Vara, or the Inverse Halloween celebrations, all of the details on competitions and how to take part and what is going on this year are linked below. So that brings us to the end of the show. If you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Also, I am able to do this thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. If you appreciate what I do and would like to help make it even better from as little as $1 a month, all of the links are provided below.